Okay.
More
So-
likely where the wave function is stronger, less where it's weaker. The wave function is what underlies our
back.
perceived reality.
Finish it off.
We never see the wave function, we only see measurements. We pluck our reality from this fantastically complex structure. Every particle position and momentum and orientation is chosen from a vast array of possibilities, a sprinkling on the high points of the cosmic wave function. The actual mechanics of quantum
Sooner or later
mechanics
you're gonna hit the
is
top
all about
right.
determining
I
the
make
shape
my
and
own damn
evolution of the
dreams
wave
and
function.
fuck 'em all
To
to the
calculate this,
side.
we use the Schrödinger equation, which tells us how the amplitude of the wave function changes over time and space.
Then there's some
Just as with our pond ripples, the wave
sociopaths.
function can
They're just-
overlap and either stack up or cancel out, constructive
They
or
don't understand their
destructive
own ground.
coherence.
It's like,
An example
come
of this
at me, bro.
behavior is in the double slit experiment, where the position wave function of an
It's about
electron
food,
passes through
breeding.
two gaps in
Is
the
it about- is it
screen
about
and then
education,
interferes
maybe?
with itself
Have you
to produce a
dated somebody
complex
before?
wave function structure. When we try to measure the final location of the electron on a detector screen,
Yeah, take
we
this piece
find
of
that
paper
we're
and
more
just
likely
run
to
it.
see
Come
it where the
on,
wave
feed
function
it
is
to you.
high, and so electron after electron we can trace out these interference bands. But what decides where the electron lands? The most mainstream interpretation of quantum mechanics,
200,000
the
frames per
Copenhagen
second.
interpretation, tells us that the wave function collapses. It instantaneously shrinks from encompassing a huge range of possible measurement outcomes to encompassing only the outcome that was
When you
measured.
throw a
And that
stone
value is selected randomly
on the
but
middle.
weighted by the pre-measurement wave
When
function.
you
Whatever causes this random
throw a
selection
stone.
is not the Schrödinger equation, it's something extra. And Copenhagen doesn't explain
All
why
the
or
ways
when
they-
this really happens. The many worlds interpretation is rather different. It says that the wave function never collapses. It evolves forever
Time
by the
being
Schrödinger
relative,
equation.
time
The
being
wave
space,
function of the
the
electron
pen's
joins
roll.
the wave function of the detector screen at all points, rippling
Mathematically.
onwards. So why does an electron end up looking like a single spot on the screen?
Well, you
What
have the
happens to the rest
dual
of the wave
diagnosis
function?
of Agent
To understand
47 and
that,
Todd.
we have to
Right.
remember that
Come
the
out with this
electron's
thing.
wave function is only a
Little
tiny
different.
sliver of a great cosmic wave function that includes every electron and every other particle in the universe. When we see that
Same
electron
stuff.
hit one spot on the
Very
screen,
different.
what we're
Getting
really
close to each
seeing
other
is a
every once in a
cascade
while. I
of
get
ripples
wow.
in the cosmic wave function, which encompasses the piecewise wave functions of the many particles as it makes its way to us. So the wave function ripples through the detector, along the wires, through computer circuitry, as
what do
photons
you
from
want
the
extra?
screen, as action potentials down our optical nerves, and finally as signals in our neurons. Only there does it manifest as a conscious awareness of a dot on a screen. The Copenhagen interpretation says that at some point in this process, most of the wave function vanishes. The parts of the electron's wave function not corresponding to our observation
you
of
were,
that spot
that's
cease to
in front of the
exist.
camel's hump, buddy.
Many worlds says the wave function persists.
Oh, beautiful.
It says that a cascade of ripples for every possible location on the screen travel down the same wires, through the same circuitry, into the same brain. They still overlap, stack on top of each other, but they no longer interfere either constructively or destructively.
3
That's
slits.
because
Find
the many,
them.
many interactions
I'm gonna
that these
hit
wave
the
function
teacher.
branches experience
Yeah,
on
over
their
there.
way to your brain
Well,
render
I get
them
the system
forever
is,
inaccessible to each other.
well, these
We can
horses
see
in the
what this
stable, if you
means a
will.
bit
Yeah,
better if
why
we
just
track the
put boxes
experiment
next to each other.
backwards.
Computer
Even prior to
schematics.
hitting the detector screen, we still had many worlds, or at least the seeds of them.
It's all
For
programmed.
example, right after passing through the
relativity
double
field
slit,
theory.
we had 2 broad classes of world, one for each slit that the
field
particle
theory
may have passed
is
through.
this and
But the
what you
key
did.
is that the wave function
Take this
slice
photon,
corresponding to
go
those
ahead and
2
run
worlds
around.
was still coherent. That means its peaks and troughs could still line up in a systematic way to produce
3 of them are
high
gonna go
and low
blind.
points in the wave
I don't know
function.
how the
Meaningful
CSI found
blips
semen
in
under the stove,
probability
but it was
distribution.
there.
But imagine you placed detector devices in front of both of those slits to
was.
measure which slit the electron passed through. There's no way to make a perfectly reliable measurement without corrupting the phase of the wave function
Has a
in a
lot to do
way
with
that
time as
destroys
far as I can
coherence,
tell.
destroys the
It's
relationship
about
between
choices
phases
of
the
free
wave
logs.
function
I'm not saying
emerging
nothing wrong with
slits.
gravity because it helps
Past the
define a
detectors, you still have
sequence,
2
but
parts
at
of
the
the
same
same
time,
electron's wave function.
fear and
But now,
anxiety,
the phase relationship, the correlation
choices
between peaks
of,
and troughs
well,
is
it's
destroyed.
the base
and so
of
you
that
don't
problem is
see an
FMA
interference
to
pattern.
begin with, so
At this point, we
you didn't
may say
figure
that the
anything
worlds have
out.
split
Oh, we've been trying.
because
I know.
there may be no way to bring
maybe.
them back into
Yeah, if I had a
coherence.
graph,
We've
I'm
talked
funny.
about this decoherence before, and
This thing
it's an
works.
increasingly favoured explanation for both the splitting in many worlds and the apparent collapse in Copenhagen. Once decohered, These worlds overlap and move through each other,
And then they
but they
collide.
can't add
Sometimes
together in
Sorcerer comes
interesting
out
ways.
behind you and then the bottom
Once there's no
forward.
longer a recoverable phase relation
Well,
between the
whoever's
branches
playing
of the
it,
wave
just-
functions,
they
your
don't know it.
worlds have separated forever. That
I
means the
can't-
wave
I can't
function
even
of
tell
your
about
brain
America.
also
What
has
do you think you
branches,
know?
different
Understand.
internal states that
Bend in
correspond
blood,
to
carved
each
in
of the
stone,
branches
brother.
of the
I mean,
wave function
not
from the
this house.
experiment. But those parts of your brain wave function are out of phase with each other. They match in many ways, including physical location, but there are subtle differences. On one branch, a collection of neurons fired
You're
to
probably
register a spot on the
anti-opposition
left.
on your Tesla
On another
stock or
branch, a
something,
different
right?
set of neurons
Like,
fired,
she's
registering
gonna
a
hide in the
spot
dresser
on
drawer.
the right.
Make sure you put a fucking lock on
So,
that.
both mental experiences exist simultaneously, but you only experience one because you are that particular mental experience. Okay, so you've observed the result of the experiment.
Gunny.
Different
Well,
users
well,
have
this
observed
is-
all results.
Well, man.
Now, let's say you record the results of the experiment
next-
by tallying